A world of kings and shadows. In those ancient days, when the earth still felt wide and young and the names of kings echoed like thunder across the valleys, the land between rivers and deserts was ruled by power and fear. Cities rose like proud crowns from the plains, each guarded by walls of stone and ambition. Kings reigned not only with law but with the sharp edge of the sword. In the east, beyond the rolling hills and distant horizons, for mighty kings had joined their strength. Their banners snapped in the wind, heavy with conquest. Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, stood foremost among them, a ruler hardened by years of victory. With him marched Amraphel of Shinar, Arioch of Elasa, and Tidal, king of nations. Together they formed a storm of iron and fire. For 12 long years, the kings of the fertile Jordan Valley had served Kedorlaomer, paying tribute and bowing their proud heads. But in the 13th year, rebellion sparked like a sudden flame. 5 kings, those of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zor, rose up and cast off the yoke of foreign rule. They believed themselves strong, they were wrong. The Eastern Kings Rise. From far-off regions came a coalition of 4 powerful kings, bound together by ambition and the memory of dominance. Their armies moved with brutal efficiency, advancing across the land like a consuming fire. Each step forward erased names and peoples that had once seemed eternal. They crushed the Rephaim, whose strength had once inspired fear. They broke the Zuzim and the Emim, whose numbers could not save them. Even the Horites, sheltered by mountains, were driven out or destroyed. The earth itself seemed to recoil as the armies passed. By the time they turned toward the Jordan Valley, the outcome felt inevitable. The Valley of Siddim and the collapse of resistance. The 5 rebellious kings gathered what strength they could and chose the Valley of Siddim as their final stand. The land there was treacherous, riddled with tar pits that oozed like open wounds in the ground. What they hoped would hinder their enemies became a trap for themselves. The battle unfolded in confusion and terror. The alliance of the East proved disciplined and relentless. The defenders faltered. Some fled into the hills, abandoning their cities. Others vanished into the tar, swallowed by the land they had trusted. The cities of the valley were left exposed, they were plundered. Their wealth taken. Their people led away, among those captured was Lot. Lot and the cost of choice. Lot had chosen his home for its beauty and abundance. The valley had promised prosperity, comfort, and ease. Yet beneath its richness lay corruption and danger, unseen until it rose suddenly and violently. Now Lot was no longer a free man. He was forced into exile, moving eastward among captives and spoils, his past life reduced to memory. His choice of land had tied his fate to a city that could not protect him. But news has a way of traveling, even through ruin. Abram at the Oaks of Mamre. Abram lived far from thrones and fortresses, dwelling among great trees that had stood longer than most kingdoms. His life was shaped not by conquest but by promise. He was not untouched by the world's violence, yet he was not ruled by it. When word reached him of the invasion and the capture of his kinsmen, something ancient and unyielding stirred within him. Family obligation and moral responsibility outweighed caution. Abram did not hesitate, nor did he seek permission. He prepared for pursuit. The gathering of the few. Abram's force was small by the standards of kings, yet it was disciplined and loyal. Men trained within his household and allies bound by trust answered his call. There were no grand declarations, no hunger for glory, only purpose. They moved swiftly, guided by knowledge of the land and a resolve stronger than fear. Against the vast machinery of empire, they carried something unseen, conviction. Nightfall and reversal. Under the cover of darkness, Abram's men struck. What had seemed an unstoppable force fractured under surprise and confusion. The enemy, burdened by loot and complacency, scattered under pressure they had not anticipated. Abram pressed the advantage, driving the invaders far beyond the borders of the land they had devastated. The victory was complete not because of numbers, but because of timing, strategy, and resolve. The captives were freed, Lot was restored, the stolen wealth was recovered. The tide that had drowned cities was turned back by faith-driven action. A sacred encounter on the return. As Abram returned from the pursuit, he encountered two very different figures, each representing a distinct vision of power and blessing. One came from a city marked by loss and moral decay, concerned primarily with recovering people and preserving influence. The other came from Salem, a city associated with peace and righteousness, bearing symbols of sustenance and sacred authority. This second figure, Melchizedek, stood apart from all earthly hierarchies. As both king and priest, he acknowledged the victory not as human achievement, but as divine intervention. His blessing affirmed that the true source of triumph lay beyond swords and strategy. Abram responded not with pride, but with reverence, offering a portion of the recovered wealth as an act of recognition and humility. In that moment, earthly conflict gave way to spiritual alignment. Refusal of corrupt reward. Faced with the opportunity to claim vast riches, Abram made a deliberate choice. He distanced himself from wealth tied to corruption and obligation. He accepted only what was necessary and what rightly belonged to others who had shared the risk. By doing so, Abram ensured that his prosperity would never be attributed to human favor or moral compromise. His trust remained anchored in the promise he carried, not in the shifting alliances of kings. He walked away with integrity intact. Meaning, interpretation, and lessons. Genesis 14 reveals a world shaped by power struggles, yet it centers on a man whose defining strength is faith rather than force. Abram does not seek conflict, but when injustice reaches his household, he acts decisively. His courage is balanced by restraint, and his success does not lead to arrogance. The chapter illustrates that moral clarity can exist even amid political chaos. Abram's interaction with Melchizedek introduces a vision of authority rooted in righteousness and peace, transcending national boundaries and military dominance. This encounter highlights the belief that divine order operates above human empires. Abram's refusal to profit from morally compromised sources underscores a central lesson: wealth gained at the cost of integrity ultimately diminishes the soul. True blessing is not measured by possession, but by alignment with divine purpose. From this chapter, one learns that loyalty to family carries responsibility, that faith can overturn overwhelming odds, and that restraint after victory is as important as courage in battle. Genesis 14 teaches that history is shaped not only by armies, but by the quiet, steadfast choices of those who trust in something greater than themselves.